Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today's edition of Ask an Airstreamer is all about giving you the tools to choose the right Airstream travel trailer. We'll have another Ask an Airstreamer for touring coaches in the coming months. Before introducing our panelists, I want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Chris, and in addition to being an Airstream owner myself, I get to work with Airstream's brand ambassadors, helping to share stories of adventures, curiosity, and exploration in their Airstream. A few housekeeping items before we get started. Today's session is being recorded and will be published on airstream.com next week, along other editions of Ask an Airstreamer. In other words, don't worry about writing everything down. You'll receive an email to this video later next week. To submit your questions at any point today, go ahead and click the Q&A button at the bottom of this screen. We'll do our best to answer all of them, but if we run out of time, we'll share an email address at the end to submit your questions. We'll also have a dedicated Q&A section at the end, where we'll share a promo code for Airstream Supply Company, which is part magazine, part travel guide, and part outfitter. And lastly, there's a 2-question survey that will be emailed to you after we wrap up today. We'd love your feedback so we can learn what you liked and things that we could do better in future editions. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover. First, we'll learn about our panelists and how they made their Airstream choices. We'll share some insight and give some tools for things to consider on your own Airstream journey. We'll do an overview of Airstream's new product configurator to make this journey easier, and we'll have dedicated Q&A at the end. So Jim, it's hard not to say Jim and Chelsea, but I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us and always so willing to share your experience and knowledge with this community. Tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are.
Thanks, Chris. It is great to be here with you and everyone who's watching this webinar and this video. My wife, Chelsea, and I, we started our Airstream adventure in 2019 when we started full-time in a 27-foot Globetrotter. That's not the one you see on screen. But then about a year later, we shifted our Airstream life. Our family grew. You see a photo there of our son, Lauren, in the bottom left, and my wife holding him when he was a newborn in the bottom right. And as our family got bigger, we decided to make our Airstream get smaller. We'll tell you more about why as we get on in the conversation here. But now we are the proud and very excited owners of a 16-foot Airstream Caravel. And we live in Michigan, Michigan's high five, and we are over on the east side of the state between Flint and Saginaw in a small town called Frankenmuth.
I had a chance to spend some time in your beautiful state this summer in the Upper Peninsula and encourage everyone to go up there. It's one of the most beautiful places in the country. Lauren, Daniel, you guys are usually full-time. So there's a story as to why there's a hotel background right now, which I'd love for you to share. But thank you also for being willing to share your experience and journey with us, and welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Chris. We're super excited to be hanging out with y'all today. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Daniel.
And we live full-time in our Airstream. We are a 30-foot Classic, and we love her. Before we started traveling full-time in the Airstream, we were traveling full-time and living in Airbnbs and hotels and traveling all over the world for about a year and a half. When the you-know-what happened, we came back and started looking around, and our travel lifestyle didn't work anymore. And we got introduced to Airstream, and we're really excited about them being an American-made company, and the quality was so incredibly amazing and iconic, and we bought our Airstream. So we've been living in it full time for about a year, a little over a year.
And to explain this background, we're currently in New York City, about to run the New York City Marathon this coming Sunday. So we're super excited about that. We're super brave people, but we're not brave enough to bring an Airstream into downtown Manhattan. So
hard no. Hard no.
That's a whole different type of adventure. So thank you both. And this is a great segue to this next slide here. Is it's not one size fits all, right? So Jim told us a little bit about starting big, getting smaller. And then Lauren and Daniel, you shared the story of just the two of you in a big Classic. So as we'll share today, kind of two different approaches to this, know that there really is no wrong way to Airstream. If you're out there enjoying the great outdoors, you're doing it right. So today's really about giving you some tools to find the one that is perfect for you at this moment. So we did a poll, and surprisingly, most folks got this right, about 26%. So how many different configurations do you when you think about the models and the different floor plans and all of the different variables? We put a poll question there, and the correct answer is 133, which is actually shocking even for me. And about 26% of the folks got that right. Most everyone, though, thought it was 47, so much smaller than it actually is. So one slide here just to help talk about the line logic and the travel trailer models and how some of these things are different from each other. So starting from left to right on the top row, Basecamp and Bambi, they're really designed for weekend warriors or even week-long trips. We know plenty of people who live in them and use them much more than that, but that's really from a design standpoint where those two models come from. Caravelle, and I'll probably get a head nod from Jim on this, but Caravelle really aims to take a lot of the features and functionality that you find in the larger travel trailers into a small format. So I'm getting Flying Cloud is actually the most popular model that Airstream makes, and then building on that as we get into the larger travel trailers. International, it builds on the Flying Clouds. You'll start to see different or enhanced interior lighting, solid surface countertops, power awnings. Those start to show up there. Globetrotter continues to evolve on that even more with enhanced decor, different furniture options, powered stabilizer jacks. And I love this description for the Classic, and Daniel and Lauren, maybe a head nod from you or some affirmation on this, but it's really meant to be a home away from home, right? It's if you could take that, everything and then put it with some wheels on it, that gets pretty close to it. And then building on that, or maybe a variation is more properly said, is the Pottery Barn. So building on a lot of the great stuff in the Classic, most of it is there, but a kind of evolution of the decor with that collaboration trailer with Pottery Barn. So I'm going to toss it back to our panelists here for this next slide, but a lot of folks who have joined us today are on their Airstream journey, considering what they should, what Airstream is right for them. I'd really love to hear from each of you, and Jim, I'll start with you. If you think about your pre-Airstream self and the idea of Airstreaming as you're falling in love with this experience, and now that you've put a few, tens of thousands of miles and lots of time in it, what was that? Is there a difference between what you thought it was and what it's now become?
Oh, I mean, only that it gets better, I think. And I truly mean that. But when we started, we were living in New York City, where Daniel and Lauren are right now. And we were ready to have a change in our life, but we still wanted to have like an apartment on wheels, our New York City Manhattan apartment. And so our first Airstream, the Globetrotter, was exactly that. So that's what we imagined our life would be. We wanted to still have those amenities of cooking food for dinner and, pushing a button to, make the air conditioning go on and having a shower. That's kind of a thing you typically want in your apartment. So the Globetrotter was perfect as we started our full-time adventure. And then we shifted. Now I'm in the upper right quadrant there. Our family started to grow, and our second baby's coming this March. We wanted a smaller trailer that we could really get out as easily and quickly as possible to spend as much time exploring the world around us in our state, traveling across the country as our boys get older. And the Caravelle offers exactly that. And what I love about Airstreams is you can imagine, what do you envision that life, that experience you want to have? And then there's a model that really can empower and equip exactly that to happen.
And Lauren and Daniel, how about for each of you?
So, like I mentioned before, when we were traveling previously, it was via airplanes and living in hotels and Airbnbs. So the Airstream lifestyle was a really big change for us, mostly because with the way we had lived before, we weren't responsible for the airplane. And now with our new lifestyle, we are. But I think that our thought process was very similar to what Jim mentioned. Like, we wanted our little New York City apartment on wheels, which is 1000% what the Classic is. But whenever we had traveled the US in the past, and right now our goal is to visit all 50 states, it had been, you just fly into a big city, you explore within, an hour or two around that area, and you fly out. And so with our Airstream life, we kind of envisioned that we would get to see more of small town USA, see more of like the random places. So it was important to us that we were able to see a lot. And so windows were a big consideration for us. We wanted that like epic view, and for it to be easy.
Yeah. And did you mentioned something I just wanted, because I'm curious. You said all 50 states in your Airstream. Is that a goal?
In our Airstream, yes.
And it's going to happen, despite people believing that it's not possible.
There is an
They're
ocean.
going to figure out a way. I know. And it always comes up. They're like, how are you going to get to Alaska and Hawaii? But I promise you, if anybody can make it happen,
we will
make it happen. Trust me.
Yeah. They have cars over there. So I imagine there's a way to get over there.
Yeah.
Let's start to dig into some of the things that folks should consider when choosing an Airstream travel trailer. So the first place we'll start here is really this idea of, do you have a tow vehicle already and you're looking to find a match for it on the travel trailer side, or is it greenfield and we're going to find the travel trailer and then go find the tow vehicle? So Jim, I'll start with you. You have a unique perspective and some firsthand experience with this. So tell us what you know.
When Chelsea and I started our Airstream adventure, we were living in Manhattan, so we didn't own a car. We took the subway everywhere, and we went down to New Jersey to look at Airstreams. Then we thought, okay, we're going to get one of those. Where do you buy trucks? So we found a place that sold trucks. They exist. And we thought, what truck do we need to tow a really big Airstream? We didn't know a ton about it. I'd driven a truck maybe once or twice in my life at that point. And what I quickly learned is if you don't know a lot about tow vehicles, you should get to know someone who does, because they will be very, very helpful. For me, that was my brother-in-law. He was incredibly helpful. He's known all about trucks and towing, and he really pointed us in the direction of a 3/4 ton pickup truck. We got one with a diesel engine. So when we were pulling our 27-foot Globetrotter, we were well equipped to take that thing anywhere. And our real thought process was, we're not just taking it flat across, Ohio or the Midwest from our home to a state park a half hour away. We were full-time going across the country, up and down mountains, inclines and declines. And the last thing you want is your travel trailer, your Airstream, pushing your tow vehicle in those situations. I always like to think, what color do I want my knuckles to be when I'm holding onto the steering wheel? So we definitely went with a big truck for our big travel trailer. But then the interesting thing is, when we downsized our travel trailer, we had this 16-foot Caravelle and we still had the truck. So we would have, a tow vehicle that was literally and visibly larger than our Airstream itself. We always joke that we could tow like 4 Caravelles in the back of our truck. Now, we recently shifted our tow vehicle though. So I've really been able to dive in for a second time, this time knowing a bit more, thinking through what we needed to match now our 16-foot Caravelle. We don't need a 3/4 ton pickup truck, but we still wanted something that gave us the safety and security for those inclines and declines when we do make trips across the country, Rocky Mountains and all that. So we went with a full-size SUV. We got a Chevy Tahoe because that still gives us the towing capacity and the payload capacity we needed. Payload capacity is the one I didn't even know was a thing, but that's, how much weight can go on the hitch itself and how much weight can you put in the vehicle. And I was like, oh, I like to put people in the vehicle along with my Airstream. So we started factoring all that in, but really we learned that your tow vehicle needs to be intentional and, in our mind, give us the most safety and confidence as possible for the adventures and the family that we have.
And Lauren and Daniel, how about the two of you?
I think we did something very similar to Jim in that we looked for somebody who had either good knowledge or more knowledge than we did. And for us, that was my cousin. Like Jim, we had never driven a truck in our entire lives. So we were just, we were under the illusion that our SUV, our current SUV, would be sufficient enough to tow a 30-foot Airstream. But what you don't know, right? And if you go to the forums online, or if you go to like the chat rooms or the the Facebook groups, you're going to know that tow vehicle is probably the number one topic that's being discussed online, right? And everybody's an expert, right? But the reality is, like to Jim's point, it's when you're considering safety, there's nothing better than making sure that you have something that can sufficiently tow without any worries. And for us, we knew that going past a 25-footer, the 25 to 30-foot range, we were going to need a 3/4 ton truck. Can you tow with a half-ton truck? Maybe. Do you want to? Probably not. If safety is your number one consideration, you probably don't want to. And for us, because we knew we were going to be full timing and going up and down the mountains and, encountering wind and all of those things, we knew that we wanted to be safe. So for us, 3/4 ton was the only option. The, toggling between gas, the diesel, non-diesel thing, that's I think tends to be a personal choice, but you can kind of dig into that a little bit further. But
we went diesel.
It's kind of like Jim did. But I think, again, to Jim's point, like if safety is a consideration, then you definitely want to go 3/4 ton on the larger Airstreams.
I had a similar experience with mine. I bought a tow vehicle that could tow it, but probably could have been a little bit bigger. And what I found was I would drive a couple hours to go camping for the weekend or for a week, and I would arrive stressed because I was white knuckling. I'm like, this isn't the best way to do this. So good things to consider there. A lot of people will say, well, what kind of Airstream should I get? And we like to think of this as really start to think about what your mission is and what type of camping do you either want to do in the near term or even perhaps even solve for the future version of yourself. If you know that in 5 years you want to do all the boondocking in the world, well, maybe look at something that can accommodate that in the future. But even if you're going to do full hookup camping now, also starting to think about where will you be traveling. We talked to a lot of folks who rarely use their air conditioning, for example, because they're always chasing good weather and they're moving around the country and avoiding too hot and too cold. And then really starting to think about full-time, part-time, weekender, what type of Airstreaming do you want to do out of the gate? So I know that from a size standpoint, just a quick anecdote from you, Jim, you had the larger 30-foot Globetrotter, is that right?
27. 30 didn't exist yet. We bought it just months before they announced the 30. We're like, oh.
So talk a little bit about the change in your mission from going to the 27 to the Caravel and some of the benefits that have gone along with that.
Yeah, when we bought the 27, we really just knew it needed to be a full-time home. And the 27 Globetrotter felt like the best fit for that. So our biggest priority was a place to live full-time wherever we were. And then the beauty that we could take our home anywhere, which is an incredible perk when you have an Airstream of that size. But we found ourselves just spending more time by default indoors because they had the space. I would work at the table, or we would be at the table in the bedroom, or there was just a couch and there was just room inside, which is wonderful. We had our 2 cats with us too, and they loved running up and down the aisle there. But we found ourselves itching to be outside more. And yes, you can get outside if you have a big Airstream, just walk out the door and you're there. But we found that with our small Airstream, by default now, we spend time outside, which is what we really wanted to shift our mission to be, especially as our family's growing. We want our boys to grow up just covered in the dirt of Michigan all around them. And so the small Airstream really makes that possible. It gives us still the space to sleep, the space to go inside if it is raining. We can still cook macaroni or pasta on the stove, but it lets us prioritize time outdoors, hiking trails, seeing the water, making a campfire, just all the things that really matter most to us.
Daniel, Lauren, what was your mission when you thought about getting into this?
So we knew we were going to be full-time. We knew we were also going to be working full-time from the road. So having an Airstream that was large enough to have 2 kind of separate spaces indoors that we could work from and take calls from was important. Unfortunately, if you do go outside and try to take a call and it starts raining, that's a real bugger. So that was one of the things that we were looking at that was really important to us. And then next being just sheer convenience. We knew we wanted to move a lot. And because we wanted to move a lot, it was really important to us that like everything was automated. So with our classic, our tanks, we've got a computer screen that shows us everything,
the smart controller,
smart controller, all of our stabilizers, they're electric. So it just speeds things up. And that was really important to us too. But now that we've been living in it for a year and a half, if they were to make a smaller classic, we would totally consider it. And the reason being is exactly what Jim is talking about. We find as well that even though we live in these beautiful, gorgeous places, we find ourselves, we have our coffee in the house, and we're like, why are we doing this? And granted, we're in New York or in New Jersey this week, and it's freaking cold outside, so that's why we're doing it. But usually when we're chasing good weather, I mean, we still find that, you know, we read a book and drink coffee and tea in the house in the morning, and it's like, why are we doing this? We could change it, but it's because you have the room.
We're working on it. I mean, you know, it's also because that classic couch is so comfortable.
It's really comfortable.
It's really, you're like, you recline your legs and you feel great, you know, but we can also change out the couch for a hammock. You know, we've got a hammock that we travel with as well. And that would also be a great place to read a book. So.
But, and then also another thing that we love about our classic is it came built in with solar. And we knew that after we got comfortable with our rig that we wanted to do some boondocking, and it has the ability to just do that out of the box. It definitely is a power hog because it's got all of those electric components to it. So from a long term, like we can easily boondock for a week in our unit because of the size of the tanks, as long as we have generators. So that's something that we loved about the Classic too.
And I can't remember, do you have lithium or the standard batteries in your Classic?
Standard AGM batteries.
Still standard AGM, okay.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm.
Yeah, we haven't had that yet.
That's a good one. That's I think you'll like that when the time comes.
Yep.
That's another selling feature of the new Airstreams, of course. With the lift.
That's right. That's right. So here's a chart that we pulled together. You know, we've talked a little bit about how many people are going to go with you. What type of capacity do you want to have, especially if you're going off grid and need to carry all your water with you? So here's a slide, and I'll leave this up and folks can take a screenshot of this if they want. It'll also be in the video, but here's a slide that starts to distill the different capacities on tank sizes and solar for the different models. You'll see here, for example, Globetrotter, there's a range 39 to 54. It's because depending on the length Globetrotter, that's the capacity of that tank. So that's what you see on the left. And then on the right, just starting to break down sleeping capacity for the vehicle. So just another tool as you're trying to navigate the right Airstream for you to help folks along the way. Other things to consider as part of this, right? So where's the bed, right? Is it in the front or the back? Can you think about backing into a campsite? Do you want the view looking out at the back of the bed, or do you want to have that for the dinette so you can sit and have more social moments and look outside? So that's a consideration. Windows, how many are there? Where are they? Are they the panoramic windows in the front and the back? Just starting to imagine and understand the differences there. Obviously, lots of interior options as you step through the different models in the line. Lauren and Daniel, you mentioned smart options, so convenience, peace of mind, ducted AC. So I'm tall, Jim's tall. This is a must-have for us if we don't want to knock our head. I'm 6.5 feet tall. Jim, you're taller than I am, aren't you? 6'7". 6'7". So important consideration there if you might be on the taller side, like Jim and I. Larger bathroom, or is it a separate bathroom and shower, or is it a wet bath? And then narrow and wide body. So this is a kind of a little known detail in the Airstream model line. So a narrow body Airstream is 8 feet wide. A wide body Airstream is just about 8 feet 6 inches wide. And the narrow body ones will basically be any Bambi, any Caravelle, and then the 23-foot Flying Cloud, International, and Globetrotter. So 23, and then Caravelle and Bambi will be narrow. And then the wider body, which again is 8 feet, 8.5 feet, is going to be any Classic, any of the Pottery Barn floor plans, and then the 25, 27, and 30 Globe, the 25, 27, 28, and 30 International, and then the 25, 27, 28, 30 Flying Cloud. So these are in the specs for each of those vehicle product pages. So if you didn't catch that, but just know that that's a distinction. Lauren and Daniel, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about, primarily there's a window piece in terms of why you chose the Classic. Tell us what's going on there.
100%. When we first started looking at Airstreams, we knew we wanted to feel like we were in the outdoors at all times. So the number of windows was one of the main considerations when we were shopping for an Airstream. And the 30-foot specifically classic has the most windows. I think it's a total of 19 or so. And that was automatically like one of the main selling features. The interior options, we know we wanted a lighter colored interiors, and there are some lighter colored interior options outside the classic realm and flying kind of stuff. That was another consideration as well. Again, the smart options was probably huge for us. We're that couple that, like, if there's a turnkey solution, we're probably going to go for that. So when they explained the smart options, we were like just 100% sold on that. And they showed us, like, here, you can operate the air conditioning unit from your bed without having to get up. And we were used to the Nest at home. So for us, we were just like all in on that feature, you know, and then everything else just became a bonus when they showed us like the charts and graphs, and it just made everything so easy for us. So for someone who's going to be traveling full time and working, because we still work full time and work our butts off, that was a huge selling feature for us.
It's a peace of mind now. You're in Manhattan, the Airstream's over in New Jersey. You can open the app and make sure it's still where you left it, which is great when you leave it around. Jim, tell us a little bit about you. I think originally wanted a Bambi, but ended up in a Caravelle because of one key feature, which I mentioned a little bit.
Yeah, we love just the small size. We always, ever since we first saw Airstreams, we're just drawn to the smallest little tiny ones. And up until recently, you know, the Caravelle was the newest creation in that small size, and that's what really piqued our interest, because the ducted AC, that gives me a 1/2 inch clearance when I stand up in the Airstream, which is essential. I mean, that's also why we went Airstream in the first place with our Globetrotter, because any other RV company, typically I had to crouch down, but the Airstream, I could actually stand up straight. And we love that even when we downsized from our Globetrotter to the Caravelle, we could still have that ducted AC. So, you know, a tall, lanky guy like myself could still stand up and even, you know, maybe do a downward dog in the Caravelle. I'd probably take up the whole thing, but I could try.
I'd love to see a picture of that. So please do share or make a video about it when it happens. So we've given folks some tools and things to consider to help, you know, navigate their Airstream journey. Jim, on this slide, I'd love for you to just talk about some of the must-haves that you created when you're going into the purchase of the Globetrotter and the Caravelle.
Absolutely, and this is the most nostalgic slide, because there's our first Airstream, the 27-foot Globetrotter. We named her Jolly, and then the one down below, the 16-foot Caravelle, is Jolly Junior, and there's our son Lauren playing in the dirt. When we started in the Globetrotter, like we said, we wanted that New York City apartment on wheels, and the Globetrotter was it. It gave us the decor, the design, the feel, everything we wanted. We wanted, you know, the shower, the bathroom. I'm 6'7". I wanted a bed I could actually stretch out in. And the Globetrotter, we did the Queen. It gave us all that space. Tank capacity is a good thing to think about. We didn't know what we needed to think about when we were starting, and we were looking at a 23-foot, and the dealer was like, you're living full-time, you might want bigger tanks for full-time living. So we're like, oh, that's good to know. And it turns out it comes in handy, especially if you're at a place where you need to boondock, or you can't dump your tanks quite as quickly. And then, you know, we just needed it to have all the towing details and safety to hitch up to our truck and all that. We got a Pro Pride hitch our first time around. Now we have an equalizer for our Tahoe that we tow with. And like I said, the ducted AC, needed it because I'm really, really tall. And the Globetrotter came with it, so does the Caravelle. But now with the Caravelle, the must-haves have changed, and we really need that thing to get us outside. Like I said, the small little tiny Airstream puts us outside in nature more and more and more. Still gives us space to sleep for our whole family. Even with our second baby coming, we'll have space for all 4 of us. Although at some point we'll probably kick the boys out into a tent on their own. Maybe Chelsea will kick me out there too, and she'll get the whole Airstream to herself. I don't know. But then the best thing is that we love they're both easy to tow. Airstreams in general are very easy to tow, but our small one now feels like a breeze. Backing it in anything, I can one shot, I'm in a campground spot, which is a really big accomplishment for me. And so we just love how nimble it is to get it anywhere and take it everywhere. And those were the must-haves, and we love every bit of it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Lauren, Daniel, what about you guys?
So we knew we wanted a towable because we wanted to be able to leave the Airstream and drive into the city or wherever else and not have to stress that, because we wanted to explore a lot of like local culture in the places we were at. So that was a big thing. We've talked about the turnkey solution thing. We wanted the modern look and feel. From a standpoint, so when we went and looked at Airstreams, of course, I immediately fell in love with the Classic. With the Classic, you've got either the 30-foot and the 33-foot. And Kathy just asked, does larger bathroom equal higher shower? So the 33-foot Classic has a huge, beautiful bathroom in the back. And most definitely in that particular model, it does mean a higher shower because it's really large. And some of our friends who are taller, like Jim and Chris, have come in there and like it would totally work for them. But with the 30-foot, it had 19 windows, which was more. We got more window space when we didn't have that bathroom, because in our unit, you've got a shower on the left and you've got like a little water closet on the right. And so we loved the windows. That was a selling feature for us. And since we're normal people height, we're like 5'6", 5'10", it didn't make a difference for us. So that's kind of how we went with the windows. And then I do really, really enjoy cooking. So it was important to me that I had like a kitchen that was really functional. Daniel and I are both vegetarians, so it definitely needed room for a big cutting board and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
And then also, like I mentioned, we loved the fact that it has the water closet on the right and the shower on the left, because what's really cool about that is when you open the water closet door, it kind of creates its own little like bathroom area. So you can even still have the windows open in the front of the unit, which is where like our table and kitchen and sofas are. And you can still use the back kind of like its own dedicated space to get ready, which is really cool.
And I think another really cool feature is that when we have friends come to stay, we have the bed in the back and then they'll stay in the front, and they can still access the bathroom without disturbing us, because we have a curtain that separates the bedroom as well. So
which is really
cool
nice.
feature. Yeah.
But we also, one of the things that we've learned that we do love about our unit compared to how it could be. So like I mentioned, we have all of our living space in the front and our bedroom in the back. And even living full time, we spend most of our time in the kitchen and living area, and we don't spend a whole lot of time in the back, in the bedroom. So from a standpoint of it being like most of the spots that you're going to back, I feel like all the best spots, whether you're boondocking or whether you're in a campground, you back into
Typically
the view.
Right, Jim, would you agree with that? I mean, it's typically not a pull through. Sometimes, a lot of times you're backing into some of the best spots.
Yeah. We had one spot where we backed in so that our door would open up to have the view of Lake Michigan and the sunset.
Okay.
And that was the exception. But usually a few slides back, there was a shot of the lake. That was from the back of our caravel. And we could just lie in bed, put Lauren down for a nap, and just see that from the back of our Airstream. So yeah, typically the rear is the view.
Yeah. So I think if we could change anything, we'd probably swap it on our Classic, so that the space that we use the most often, that living space, would be on the back. But from a standpoint of like sacrificing the number of windows in the bathroom and the living quarters, like we wouldn't swap it. But if it was there.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, you'd probably agree. Like, one of the really cool things that's come out recently is that rear hatch. I mean, we've seen that in person, and that is just a sweet addition. So I've seen a couple in person.
There's a question in the chat from Michael, and he asks, what's the difference between choosing front and back beds other than sleeping in the front or the back? So we've talked a little bit about this now. Any adds to that? So I've heard you say, think about where you're going to spend the most time. For Lauren and Daniel, for you guys, it's in the kind of the galley and the lounge area. So any other considerations in terms of differences between front or back that you guys would like to add?
We do love, and this is counterintuitive to what I just said about as far as like the best views are in the back. We do like that our bedroom is in the back, because when you have people who come over, or you meet people at the campground or whatnot, like everybody wants to see your Airstream because it's freaking cool, right? So when they come in, they're not walking into our bedroom being right there on the right. It's like all the way to the very, very back. So it offers some additional privacy that I really like about our layout. But I think it's really just personal preference. I think that if we had it the other way around, we'd probably like that too. So
Yeah.
it's just
And Chris, really to your earlier point, I mean, the most important thing is just to get out there and start exploring. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always be a personal choice, you know,
Right.
which configuration you go with. But ultimately, if you're just getting out there and exploring, you're not going to regret anything.
That's right.
That's what we found too with our Globetrotter. It was a front bed Globetrotter, so the dinette was in the rear. So when we backed into a spot, like our table where I would work and everything would be there, which was great. My office just had a great view every time I would work from the inside. And now with our Caravelle, it's a rear bed. So the Caravelle is so small anyway, it feels like everything is looking out in the rear. But the bed is backed right up there on there, which for us has been perfect with, you know, a young kid, newborns. We can just lie in bed. Chelsea can nurse in bed watching the sunset. It's just the best spot. The point is, whatever configuration you have, there's a huge advantage to it. And just make sure you use that advantage and take the most of that view that you get.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of great stuff for folks to consider. So another piece of this is, where are you going to keep it? You know, if you're not full-timing it like Lauren and Daniel are, you'll need a place to keep it when you're not using it. So, and this can really start to impact size, for example. So if it's too big, can you still, you know, park it on the side of the house or whatever your plan might be to keep it at home? But also making sure if your plan is to keep it at home that, you know, the HOA or any sort of you know, government ordinances or municipal ordinances don't have any issues with that. And then other options to consider, other things to consider for a storage facility is, what's the security situation like? Is the gate locked? Are there cameras? All of that. And I think this one's important. The 24/7 access. I've come across storage facilities where they have hours. And one of the great things about being an Airstream owner is you have the freedom and flexibility to kind of show up when you want. So know if that's the case before you go into it, if you're planning to return it, you know, late at night on a Sunday so you can hop back to work on a Monday. And then another point here too is more and more, some of the Airstream dealers are offering storage solutions as well. So as you get to know your dealer, see if this is something that they can help with if you do need a place to store. I found that the easier and closer it is to where I am, the more I use it. So that's definitely a good factor as well. So as you're doing your research and you're hopefully whittling down that 133 different configurations to hopefully a single digit, one of the best next steps is to find a preferred dealer and to get into these. My journey was kind of dangerous. I did some research. I was curious if I could actually stand in it. So I went, my intention was, I'm just going to go to the dealership to see if I could stand in it. And then 2 weeks later, I had an Airstream. So it's the best kind of danger, I guess, coming home with an Airstream. But really find that dealership, because they will continue to be a resource for you after you purchase, and the servicing and care of it. And just go inside and sit in them, imagine yourself in it. I know from an inventory standpoint, you know, things were particularly tight earlier, and I know that Airstream is working hard to improve the inventory at the dealers, so folks can actually get inside and take a look here. The other piece of this too is budget and financing. So will you be paying cash or will you be financing it? It's different than a typical vehicle loan. So make sure that you sit with a qualified financial person at the dealership to learn, or even your bank to learn what the options. But some of the differences here, I'll toss it over to the panel, and Lauren and Daniel, I'll let you kind of add some perspective here. But on the right, Airstream announced earlier a partnership with Bank of America. There's a financing calculator available now on the website. So that's what this tool is on the right, if you're trying to figure out which Airstream might be best for you. But Lauren, Daniel, tell us a little bit about the differences that you experienced when you went to go purchase your Airstream from a finance side.
Sure. Well, I mean, first thing was that we figured it was on wheels, right? So we figured, like, going to get our truck, you'd walk in, you'd find the one you want. You know, with our truck, we didn't even put anything down because they were running some kind of special. We walked out and you just started paying monthly on it.
And we also, like a truck, figured that the terms would be, roughly, 60-month terms. We didn't realize at all that you could have terms up to 20 years for something like this.
Because it's more like a mortgage than it is
Mhm.
necessarily like an auto loan. So with our Airstream, we put 10% down on it and ended up financing it through our dealership, which worked out great, especially right now with the interest rates as low as they are. We decided that we were going to do the financing through Bank of America and through the dealership for the ease of use. But I will also say that, if you've got a bank that you love, you can shop that around to get the best, interest rate possible. So there are a lot of options, and it definitely makes a difference if you are going to finance it. And what that monthly payment is important to how you're going to budget for, how you're going to use it.
Yeah, and I would say, not to call out other, RV manufacturers, but because Airstreams have such a very high resale value, I felt more comfortable stretching out the terms of financing as opposed to maybe I would have done with, another type of RV.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even now, our Airstream, if we were to sell it today, we would make money on it. And no one's ever going to tell you that with another type of RV.
Yeah.
It's a unique time for sure. And I think one of the benefits there, and you're absolutely right, from a resale standpoint, because they are built to last for a very long time. But from a resale standpoint, they hold their value really well. But it underscores this idea, if you're trying to figure out what is the best Airstream for you, it doesn't have to be a forever decision, right? Jim is a great example of this, where you had a Globetrotter. How long did you have your Globe before you switched up?
Just over a year and a half we had it.
And so you can work away, you can work yourself around the Airstream ecosystem and have options. It's not a forever choice. And the other piece too is, for some folks, and you'll definitely want to talk to a qualified tax professional, but because it's considered a domicile, for some people, depending on their tax situation, you might ask your accountant to see if the mortgage interest is tax deductible as part of it. So if we were to go back into our pre-Airstream selves, Jim, I'll start with you. What do you wish that you knew then that you now know about this experience?
Yes, when we started full-time especially, we never boondocked. We did pretty much only ever full hookups, because we like to take showers and go to the bathroom. That's a good thing to do, right? Not that you can't do that when you're boondocking. You can. You just do it differently without the full hookup. But we learned that the full hookups are nice, but electric only or boondocking sites are incredible and can provide some of the best campsites we've ever experienced. With our current goal to go to all 74 state parks in Michigan, those are all electric only. So we're really getting good with the wet bath and the bathhouses at the state parks. But that shift of mindset was so worth it for us. Also, when it comes to boondocking, those solar panels work really well. We knew they were there kind of as a just in case we need it kind of a thought, but now we've started to use them this past summer, and we can't wait to go back to more boondocking state parks. Our favorite one, Leelanau State Park, north of Traverse City, is officially our favorite state park we've ever been to. It's incredible, but it's no hookups. It's pure boondocking. And then lastly, I wish when we started, we had done more cooking over the campfire. I really think cooking over the campfire is just a greater experience than cooking inside the Airstream. Don't worry, Lauren, I'm with you. I can cook, a mean, quiche in my Airstream oven, but I love the campfire pies and all the things I can make over an open flame and some nice hot embers.
You're making me hungry.
Me too.
Lauren, Daniel, what about you? If you were to go back and look at your pre-Airstream selves, what advice would you give, or what did you wish that you knew?
Well, we said we were going to do 50 states in 365 days, which we did the math on that, and it meant that we needed to visit about a state a week, and that was dumb. But our pre-Airstream selves did not know that. It meant that we were trying to move too quickly, and we've talked to a lot of other new Airstreamers, and they're so excited about getting out there and seeing so many different places, and that's wonderful. But when you're in charge of your airplane, it's also exhausting. So from a standpoint of like planning your trips, start slow. What we did is we were like, okay, we're going to get our Airstream and then we're going to drive 12 hours to the next place. That is a horrible idea.
And then a few weeks in, we're like, hey, let's try boondocking. We know nothing about our rig at all, but let's try it, you know?
So don't
Yeah.
push yourself to go too quickly. Learn your rig, you know, spend some time camping local, not just at local campgrounds, but like close to wherever home is for you, so that if you forget things, you can easily go back and get that stuff, and it makes it a lot more comfortable and less stressful. So going slow is important.
And I'm going to add to that, don't be hard on yourself, because it's very easy to be hard on yourself for not knowing everything at first. And there's always a learning curve. And you're going to meet people at campgrounds because it's the most amazing community ever. That all started where you were today if you're just getting started in the RV space. And they'll always say, oh gosh, I remember when it was difficult to back in, and you know, maybe to some extent it maybe still is, or all of the other things that come with this RV life. But just don't be hard on yourself. There's a little bit of a learning curve, but it's so worth it.
Well, Daniel and I had never stayed the night in an RV in our entire lives before we bought our Airstream.
At all.
So I'll always also say, like, if you're nervous about the backing up thing, because everybody always is when they bought one and has never dealt with that before, you can call campgrounds in advance, let them know what time you're going to be there, and ask if there's anybody there who can help you with backing it up, especially if you're a single camper, or, you know, your partner, like me, does not know how to help you back up to start. So there are a lot of options.
Or look for pull-throughs when you're first getting started out. Yeah. So,
but don't be afraid to back it up. You totally can. And then also, kind of like what Jim was speaking to, being a little more adventurous after we had learned our rig, and being open to finding places without full hookups, because they really do provide some of the most breathtaking scenery. And also, you want to just get to know your rig when it's not on hookups, because you never know when you'll find yourself in the Texas freeze and then you're doing boondocking on steroids and don't have a clue what you're doing, which just happened to occur to us. And if you want to see that level of misery, feel free to check out our YouTube channel at Wander Local. But it is really, really important that you get to know your rig when it's not on full hookups. But make it easy on yourself. Find a state park that has you know, electric and water. It just doesn't have sewer. Spend a week there. See how you use your tanks. Pay attention to how much, you know, shower water you use when you take a shower. So those kinds of things, learning about your rig, is really important to do pretty quickly.
And to add to that, this photo in this slide here is from Oliver Lee Memorial State Park. And literally that was a power only site. And I mean, you can see the stars there. That's exactly what we were seeing that night. And I mean, there's there are campground lights, no anything. It was just the beautiful, bright stars in the sky, and that makes it all worth it.
And I think the more comfortable folks get with being off grid and you know, straying away a bit from established campsites, the more flexibility that you have, where you don't have to get a reservation, and you have usually the most incredible views, and it's either free or it's something ridiculous like $5 a night. I mean, it's some of the most beautiful places I've been, you know, in BLM land, on BLM land in southern Utah, and it's great. I didn't need a reservation. I just showed up, and Zion was 5 minutes away. So I love that idea of getting to know it before you need it, which is great. And then, you know, we'll also hear folks who will just basically boondock in their driveway, just unplug it.
Yeah.
And this is a great way to say, to really understand what you need. And if something goes wrong, you can just plug it back in, or you can go inside and spend the night as you sort things out, right? So lots of options there. And, you know, speaking of options, you know, these are some of the different things, or the most commonly upgraded options that folks will do to their Airstream. So thinking about an Airstream as a hand-built thing, and that has the ability to offer a ton of flexibility in terms of how you want to continue to make it yours, or, you know, further refine it for your particular use case. So you can add a second air conditioner if yours only has one on most larger floor plans. You can always add more solar either to the roof or as standalone panels that you can plug into the front of the Airstream. You can add internet to any Airstream model with Airstream Connected. You can add a larger inverter, or for some units that don't have an inverter, you can add an inverter. So the ability to have 110 volt power. You can add stone guards. So if you have, for example, a Bambi or another model that doesn't have it, you can always add those after the fact. And Daniel and Lauren, this one's for you. You can also add lithium after the fact as a drop-in replacement. Airstream's done the engineering on this, so they're just drop in at the dealership, and with the certified dealer install, it's pretty easy to upgrade. So versatile platform. After you buy it, you can change it along the way. And then one other resource that's also helpful is Airstream earlier this year launched a product configurator. So this allows you to not only select which Airstream, but starting to look at the different lengths, the different decors. So you can actually build and customize, or you can build and select your own Airstream based on the available options today, and then it gives you a custom brochure based on what you configured. So just another tool to help whittle down the 133 or so options along the way. So I want to touch on some resources. Before I do that, I'm going to skip to the end of this slide. Both of you have invested the time to share your experience and adventure online. So Jim, tell us a little bit about what we can find on your channel and kind of the type of content that's up there.
Yeah, our channel is called Free and Simple because we set out wanting to live a free and simple life in our Airstream, and we still do that, even simpler in the small Airstream. So you can find videos from a year ago, because having a baby apparently takes up a lot of your time and you don't get to edit as many videos anymore. But there's a bunch still waiting to be filmed and edited, but we have a lot of adventures about our full-time life, and now specifically about adventures of traveling with a baby and soon to be 2 babies. And so we just love documenting that experience for ourselves and for others along the way.
Daniel, Lauren, what about the two of you? What's Wander Local, and what can we expect to see there?
Sure. So we do YouTube and Instagram, but so we've been small business owners for the last 12 years. We own an advertising agency. And one of the biggest things that happened over the last year and a half is that small businesses have really struggled with the challenges that the last 2 years have brought. And so our passion and mission was that we wanted to explore and continue our travel journeys in our Airstream specifically, as it's a US based product, and show small businesses across the country and the different adventures that you can explore through those. So our travel in Wander Local is exactly that. And a lot of our first series of videos is what not to do in your Airstream, because we are not planners. We are like fly by the seat of your pants and just explore and adventure kind of people. We're the weirdos who will like go to YouTube when something goes wrong, not in advance of learning it. So they're very educational, not because that was the goal, but because, well, we broke a bunch of stuff. So you can also enjoy all of that.
We also figured out a bunch of stuff along the way, So yeah, and that's kind of part of it.
It's definitely entertaining.
Everyone needs to scroll back. You got to scroll back and watch the one where Daniel and Lauren were at Disney campground. That one had some interesting moments with the sewer hose, I remember.
Yes, and we will also suggest for your very first night of camping, probably don't go on a holiday weekend like Labor Day to the busiest campground in the country, especially if you've never backed up your Airstream, although campers are the best, so someone will probably help you, which is good.
I would like to say I crushed that backing up experience for the very first time, but as the video will tell,
very entertaining.
Yeah. So two great resources in terms of the sharing of your experiences along the way. Some others here, we mentioned Airstream Dealership. They're your lifeline to all things Airstream. So get to know them along the way. Airstream.com. In addition to having all the product pages, the Airstream launched Airstream University recently, and this is meant to really arm folks with the knowledge and information to Airstreaming as for new Airstream owners. So this is really targeted to them in terms of how to, and thinking about that walkthrough that you'll have at time of delivery. This really aims to digitize that and extend it to whenever you need it. There's an Airstream knowledge base. Support.airstream.com is a great way just to start learning about the different models and things to consider in terms of maintaining your Airstream. And there's also a great community online. Air Forums is really helpful for even discussions like this, but for folks who are curious about maintenance and how to do things along the way, or different opinions on hitches and tow vehicles and everything in between. And there's also a great collection of Facebook groups: Airstream Addicts, Airstreaming for Newbies, Airstream Basecamp Owners, and Airstream Motor Coaches. So some really great content there. And then another good one, I know that that you guys have done this, but go to an Airstream rally. Even if you don't own an Airstream, it's a great way to get a glimpse into the community. More than likely, folks will be more than happy to show you the inside of their Airstream. So if you're wanting to experience different floor plans, or even see how people have personalized their own, personalized it, made it their own, that's a great way. But just check, there's a link here, airstreamclub.com/events. Pick one that you're interested in going to, or that's near you, and then send a note to the organizer and say, hey, I'm considering purchasing one. Is it okay if I come? And more than likely you'll get a nod. But Lauren and Danielle, what's your experience? Danielle, what's your experience been at the rally in terms of what's the vibe like? What can people expect if they've never been to one?
Oh my gosh, we did not know what to expect at our first Airstream rally. The first one we went to was the Airstream the International Rally in Lebanon, Tennessee.
There were 800 Airstreams.
And it was so much more than we had ever imagined. I think one of the really cool things is we got to see some of the vintage Airstreams dating back to the 40s.
So
and
beautiful.
A lot of the amenities that we have today didn't exist back then. So it's also very cool to see how people repurpose some of the floor spaces and floor plans and added some of the modern amenities. But in all reality, it's such a helpful community. We've met so many friends that we still talk to today at these rallies and have become close with. And it's also probably, it can be dangerous to your pocketbook because you see so many cool things. You're like, oh, I need that. Oh, I definitely want that. Oh, I definitely want that too. Like, look at that new cool hose. I want that. So it's kind of a fun way to learn about some of the cool new accessories that are out there as well.
And Chris, you're absolutely right. We met multiple people who were actually not at the rally with their Airstreams, that they were just like, literally, we met the nicest couple. They were riding their bikes down through like all the Airstreams, and she stopped me and she was like, can you tell me a little bit about this? Like, do you have an Airstream? And I was like, absolutely. And I was a little bit further away from our Airstream. I'm like, oh, this will just be way easier if you just come look at ours. So I mean, people are just so open and welcoming, and we've met multiple people like that who are just there to kind of see it and experience a little bit of it. And I mean, I wish we would have done that. I feel like we probably would have like bought an Airstream on the lot that day if we had done it. But it is really, really fun.
Yeah, the community is fantastic. You're not just buying a vehicle, you're buying into, you're part of the community. Totally. So moment of truth for both of you here. Lauren and Daniel, I'll start with you. So how many years in, how many miles so far? And then would you choose the same one if you had to do it all over again, or if a new model has come out since you bought yours? That's a fair one too.
I'll just cover how far we've been. We've covered maybe 28 states and 32,000 miles at this point.
In 14 months.
In 14 months, and we've stayed at over 100 campgrounds.
So we've definitely put a lot of mileage on our Airstream. We love the Classic. I think for full-time living, I don't think we would change it at all. If they made a smaller Classic, we may consider that, but it's not an option right now, so that's not a thing. But very similar to Jim and Chelsea deciding to downsize, if we ever decided we did want a sticks and bricks, we know for a fact we would still want an Airstream. And I do think that we would downsize, and one of the biggest reasons would be because we would want to get outside more when we are Airstreaming and adventuring. So we love ours for right now. It's perfect for what we're doing, and we're loving living full time in it. So we're not planning on changing that anytime soon. But, it's really about the lifestyle that you want and how you envision living Airstream life.
And sticks and bricks is a traditional home, right? That's just for some Airstream parlance. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure folks can follow along. And then Jim, how many miles, how long, where have you been? And then would you keep the Caravelle or buy the Caravelle again?
Yeah, we've had the Caravelle for just over a year. We got it August of 2020, and we've been to 11 different state parks. And I can't think of mileage. I don't know how many miles it is, all over the state of Michigan, up to the top tip, down to here. So we've gone all over there. We haven't done the UP yet, though, Chris. That's the Upper Peninsula. That's the part that looks like you're in Vancouver, Canada, but you're just still in Michigan. That's on next summer's bucket list with a newborn and a 2-year-old. Ooh, but we would absolutely keep the Caravel. This is the perfect Airstream for us. We fell in love with it the minute we saw it. We actually saw it the day we picked up our Globetrotter. We're like, ooh, what about that little 16-foot Caravel? Oh, we're living full time right now. So this is our home away from home when we're not in our sticks and bricks, and we would not change it for the world.
Awesome.
The only thing we would change is building a bigger garage so we could park the Airstream in our house. We just need a taller garage.
Yep, I hear you. All right, so let's try to squeeze in maybe a couple questions, or at least acknowledge a couple in there. So Michael had some questions around towing safety. What's the difference between max capacity and the weight of the Airstream, all that great stuff. So there's a link in the chat that is a comprehensive blog post on the different weight definitions and how they all work together. Jim, question for you from Dane. Did you look at a motor coach at all in terms of downsizing on your Evolution?
Yeah, we looked at them and considered it. If it was just Chelsea and myself, it might be an option. But with, one kid and now 2 on the way, we knew that we needed the ability to, leave camp in our vehicle with a little more ease to go grab, cheese pizza or something. So we love the Sprinter vans. They're a great aesthetic, great vibe, but it wasn't for us with our mission that we're out on here.
Julie wants to know the advantages between the non-wood floors, so the composite flooring that Airstream switched to, so lighter, more rigid, is not going to deteriorate if it gets wet. So lots of great benefits there. Also a great blog post on this as well. So Julie, take a look at that. I put the promo code for Airstream Supply Company on the screen. So do take advantage of that. And then if there are any additional questions that we didn't have a chance to get to today, please send it to hello@airstream.com, HELLO@airstream.com. And we'll answer every question that comes in. Jim, Lauren, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to share your experience today. Lauren, Daniel, rooting for you guys and having a good race on Sunday. And for all the folks who have joined us, thanks for taking the time. And please take a look for the 2 questions